The story does not begin with gunfire or headlines, but with quiet tension stretching across forgotten streets. In Europe's neglected neighborhoods, young men learned early that opportunity was selective and patience rarely rewarded. Silence became a language, and ambition hardened into something colder. Long before Britain understood the threat, a criminal future was already taking shape. In the outer districts of Amsterdam, second-generation Moroccan youths lived between expectation and exclusion. At home, discipline and cultural pride defined identity, while outside, rejection shaped reality. They were neither fully accepted nor fully dismissed. That fracture produced a generation searching for power on its own terms. The Netherlands offered more than frustration. It revealed access. Europe's largest ports moved unimaginable wealth through steel containers every day. Watching cocaine flood the continent changed how these young men understood power. Meanwhile, Albania was emerging from decades of isolation into institutional chaos. Criminal clans filled the vacuum left by weak governance and economic collapse. Loyalty, blood ties, and discipline became survival tools. Violence was not emotional, but instructional. Albanian groups refined criminal efficiency through necessity. Trust was enforced through consequence rather than belief. Silence was protected at any cost. These networks were built to endure pressure rather than attention. By the early 2000s, these two worlds collided naturally. Moroccan Dutch traffickers controlled access to supply lines, while Albanian clans offered enforcement and logistics. The partnership was not cultural, but strategic. Profit mattered more than identity. Britain entered the picture as opportunity rather than destination. London offered financial scale, global connectivity, and overstretched policing structures. It was a marketplace designed for exploitation. Expansion became inevitable rather than optional. The first arrivals were careful and invisible. They avoided attention, studied street dynamics, and embedded themselves quietly. Visibility was treated as danger, not success. Power was measured in control, not reputation. British street gangs underestimated the shift. Local crime followed unwritten rules shaped by territory and history. The newcomers ignored tradition entirely. Efficiency replaced familiarity overnight. Prisons played an unexpected role in consolidation. Inmates exchanged contacts, lessons, and ambitions behind walls meant to contain them. Influence traveled where freedom could not. Confinement became a classroom. Inside prison, psychology hardened rapidly. Loyalty was temporary. Usefulness was survival, and fear replaced trust. Weakness carried permanent consequences. Discipline was sharpened behind bars. As profits grew, confidence followed quickly. Money flowed through shell companies, car washes, restaurants, and property investments. Each successful shipment reinforced belief in invincibility. Control felt permanent. Beneath discipline, paranoia began to spread. Trust expired quickly, and betrayal was always expected. The streets that taught them ambition also warned them of collapse. Success felt fragile. Britain remained largely unaware during this phase. There were no spectacular headlines or public panic. Power expanded quietly and deliberately. The foundation was set before alarms were raised. When authorities finally noticed patterns, it was already too late. Supply routes were secured, violence tested, and loyalties purchased. The Syndicate had embedded itself deeply. Removal would not be simple. This was not the rise of a single gang. It was the emergence of a modern criminal system shaped by globalization. Orders meant little compared to access. And the rise was only beginning. Cocaine shipments soon arrived with precision instead of chance. Fragmented smuggling gave way to coordinated logistics. Each delivery strengthened dominance. Survival transformed into control. Control of supply became the first pillar of power. Drugs flowed through compromised European ports with minimal resistance. Rotterdam and Antwerp fed the British market steadily. Silence ensured success. Distribution within Britain was carefully layered. Leadership insulated itself from street exposure. Runners were disposable and easily replaced. Risk flowed downward. Traditional British gangs felt pressure immediately. Prices dropped and reliability replaced loyalty. Reputation lost its influence. Fear filled the gap. Money reshaped cities quietly. Luxury lifestyles appeared suddenly without explanation. Visibility was managed strategically. Excess was controlled. Leadership avoided reckless display. Laundering operations transformed criminal profit into apparent legitimacy. On paper, everything looked clean. The illusion worked. Encrypted communication changed everything. Orders crossed borders instantly, without voices or names. Violence became distant and procedural. Murder turned administrative. Emotion vanished from execution. Death sentences arrived as messages. Killings became tasks. Fear traveled faster than truth. Recruitment intensified rapidly. Marginalized youth were drawn by belonging and money. They were trained to follow orders without question. Disposability was part of the deal. Street-level violence hardened recruits quickly. Violence became preventative rather than reactive. Fear replaced negotiation. Compliance followed. Hierarchy tightened internally. Albanian clans enforced discipline, while Mocro figures managed supply. Results outweighed loyalty. Failure carried consequences. Disputes were resolved through intimidation or execution. Negotiation became unnecessary. Efficiency ruled everything. Mercy vanished. Law enforcement struggled to adapt. These were international operators, not local criminals. Traditional policing models failed repeatedly. Jurisdiction limited response. Witnesses disappeared or refused cooperation. Fear collapsed cases before trial. Silence proved more powerful than bribery. Justice stalled. Prisons extended influence instead of containing it. Inmates enforced discipline internally. Messages traveled freely. Sentences were temporary setbacks. Expansion reached its peak quietly. Arrests were absorbed and losses replaced. Momentum felt unstoppable. Confidence edged toward arrogance. The Syndicate began dictating terms. Defiance was punished swiftly and publicly. Britain's underworld was rewritten. Control felt complete. But power never remained stable. Money magnified ambition and resentment. Cracks formed quietly. Loyalty weakened. Missed payments signaled instability. Silence replaced reassurance. Fear turned inward. Paranoia spread. Mocro factions began turning on each other. Younger figures challenged leadership. Respect demanded proof. Blood answered questions. Albanian clans watched closely. Loyalty depended on profit and stability. Instability shortened tolerance. Alliances weakened. Feuds crossed borders rapidly. Disputes escalated into vendettas. Violence demanded response. Control slipped. Executions became more visible. Bodies delivered messages. Streets became warnings. Attention followed. Betrayal became survival. Information traded for safety. Trust collapsed entirely. Everyone became expendable. Encrypted technology fueled paranoia. Messages were intercepted and manipulated. Secrecy backfired. Control eroded. London descended into chaos. Murders increased rapidly. Fear replaced structure. Order vanished. Police connected patterns slowly. Data replaced rumors. Surveillance expanded aggressively. Pressure mounted. Leadership grew increasingly isolated. Meetings stopped entirely. Decisions became rushed. Errors multiplied. Former allies were eliminated preemptively. Empire builders vanished. Loyalty ended. Fear ruled. Prisons turned into battlegrounds. Factions clashed violently inside. Sentences intensified conflict. Control dissolved. Leaks multiplied under pressure. Everyone was suspected. Internal collapse accelerated. Exposure became inevitable. Rivals sensed opportunity. Smaller gangs moved quickly. Territories shifted overnight. Desperation fueled violence. Mistakes escalated dramatically. Innocents were caught in conflict. Public tolerance collapsed. Media scrutiny intensified. Headlines replaced whispers. Political pressure increased. International cooperation expanded. Borders mattered again. Encrypted platforms were compromised. Messages were read in real time. Secrecy collapsed fully. Evidence accumulated. Orders became documentation. Efficiency betrayed crimes. Violence exposed hierarchy. The system unraveled. Arrests followed steadily. Protective layers disappeared. Leadership was exposed. Fear reversed direction. Informants emerged everywhere. Survival drove cooperation. Secrets spilled rapidly. Silence failed. Financial networks were seized. Cash flow stopped abruptly. Power starved quickly. Influence faded. Trials replaced shadows. Mythology collapsed publicly. Reality destroyed legend. Romance died. Violence no longer protected control. Each act strengthened prosecutions. Fear lost effectiveness. Collapse accelerated. Younger members watched disillusioned. Futures ended early. Illusions shattered completely. Legacy turned bitter. Leaders fled or hid unsuccessfully. Persistence closed escape routes. Capture followed. Time ran out. The fall arrived gradually. Scale guaranteed exposure. Reach ensured destruction. Collapse was inevitable. Afterward, the empire was unrecognizable. Trust vanished entirely. Fragments remained scattered. Control ended. There was no final showdown. Only silence returned. Power faded quietly. Streets moved on. When headlines disappeared, transition began. Power changed shape rather than ending. Peace did not arrive. Adaptation followed. The Syndicate permanently reshaped British crime. Global thinking replaced local mentality. Ambition scaled upward. Lessons spread quietly. New criminals studied the collapse carefully. Visibility decreased intentionally. Structures flattened for survival. Efficiency endured. Violence recalibrated instead of disappearing. Disappearances replaced executions. Fear refined itself. Control adapted. Markets adjusted rapidly. Demand never declined. Routes were reused. Supply continued. Former lieutenants attempted comebacks. None rebuilt dominance. Fragmentation defined the aftermath. Power dispersed. Prisons remained incubators. Experience transferred silently. Knowledge became currency. Influence persisted. Communities carried long-lasting scars. Trauma lingered across generations. Trust weakened deeply. Recovery slowed. Law enforcement claimed disruption rather than victory. Crime adapted again. Surveillance expanded permanently. Conflict evolved. Families paid the hidden price. Wealth vanished quickly. Consequences endured forever. Memory lingered. Online mythology persisted briefly. Reality remained darker. Romance proved false. Truth prevailed. The legacy revealed vulnerability. Power attracts the scrutiny. Control collapses inward. Always. Globalization enabled both rise and fall. Connections betrayed creators. Scale destroyed secrecy. Balance corrected. Britain's underworld changed permanently. Ambition globalized fully. Cycles continued. Lessons remained. There was no ending, only dispersion. Influence fractured completely. Names faded. Memory thinned. Some leaders aged behind bars. Others disappeared quietly. Most were forgotten. Time erased them. What remained was a blueprint of consequence. Power built on fear collapses. Control is temporary. Silence returns. The streets moved forward relentlessly. New players replaced old ones. The cycle prepared again. Nothing stayed still. The story revealed modern criminal truth. How empires rise, dominate, and fall. How silence always follows power. And how fear never lasts forever.